Actually, we have a special message for you from Andres. I have no idea what he's about to say.
Hello, everyone. I am Andres. I was the kid in the movie. I know. Some people call me special and some people call me strong. But sometimes life just doesn't go out all the time. Alright, see you.
Thank you for presenting our movie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vincent. Why don't we have everyone introduce themselves?
I'm Nate Hodling, the director.
You might gotta turn it on. Are those on? Yeah, with the flash screen here.
Hello. Oh, yeah. I'm Nate Hodling, director of Fault Lines.
Hi. I'm Jenny Liu with the Friends of Educational Opportunities in Chinatown.
I'm Bob Siegel, and I used to teach for about 25 years at the Chinatown campus.
I'm Alice Barkley. I'm a retired attorney, and I work in the Chinese community with the community ever since the 1970s.
I thought we'd kick it off by this is the lazy way to do a panel. I'm gonna have you guys compare and contrast each other. I'm curious because we got lucky in that we have people from both movies here watching a new movie. I assume neither of you had seen the other's movie beforehand, right? So this is a dumb and simple question, but I'm dying to know. What did you each think about the others? I mean, what commonalities did you see? What differences? Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I love Block by Block. My first time seeing it, but I know Kevin, the filmmaker, who made another film about SROs that came out last year. And yeah, I mean, I think both films have in common, the power of groups coming together to, determine their own lived environment and kind of what you can do when you organize and fight. And, it's true on both sides, as you saw in our film, of, it can be really powerful from the community organizing perspective and from what YIMBY and amazing organizations like this are doing. So, yeah, both really took you inside that struggle, which I don't think most audiences really get to see. They just kind of see the outcome of whether it got built or not.
Yeah, I think to me, it struck me that both movies were an attempt to make a drama out of what is fundamentally like a bureaucratic land use fight, which I think I've always wanted to do, but no idea how to do, so I'm glad someone else did it. What do you guys think?
Well, being an urban planner my whole life, actually I was the first planner for the Chinese Community Development Corporation. It wasn't named that. And I remember going to planning commission meetings when Rai Okamoto was the planning director, and they were going to downzone the entire western region of San Francisco. And I said, basically, you were ghettoizing the Southern Market, the Mission, and Tenderloin and Chinatown because you wanted to have this preserve of single-family
What year was that?
residences. I think it was 1979.
Wow.
I know, sounds ancient, huh? Yes, I'm still alive.
Congratulations.
And the irony is, my husband and I actually lived on 22nd and Kirkham, which is about 6 blocks from that development. So I have to say, exactly like you mentioned, Vince, that to have land use be a topic, and for people to find it dramatic, or I was actually shocked how many of you people showed up on a weekday to watch. I really appreciate it. Most of us, the irony is we are the community trying to represent the residents to say we want development. We never protested all the high rises that went from Kearny Street, which was the waterfront, all the way to the financial district, to the ferry building. But yet when we propose low-income housing, a park, or a community college, then suddenly everybody protests. So it was the irony that two different positions of how neighborhoods see development.
Yeah, there's so many similarities. I started working in affordable housing directly across the street. When the Gartland fire, there used to be arson in this district on a weekly basis, and the Gartland apartments, 23 people died. That's right above Manny's, and we fought hard to get truly affordable housing, which it is. So I see the struggles, and all these things that it's tough, and you got to persist, and eventually good comes out of it. But you got to stick in for the struggle, and I think that was evident in both these films where people just kept working. Of course, on both sides, but it's tough.
Any differences? I should have said that into the mic. Any differences? Similarities abound. I'm curious if there's any contrasts.
Check with me an hour or two. I don't know. It takes a lot of thought on that one.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I'm a land use attorney my whole entire career. I started at the city attorney's office, so I also have the perspective of what the planning department, the building department does oftentimes to delay the process of building housing. I represented mostly developers. However, all of my pro bono projects are for affordable housing. And I just give you one very quick example of how difficult it is to build anything, even affordable housing in the city. You may or may not know about the senior affordable housing funded by HUD on top of the Broadway tunnel. How many of you know that about that?
Lady Shaw.
Okay, very few. First, you have to change the zoning from public zoning, because it's owned by the city, into residential use. After we get that done, then of course you have opposition from an extremely wealthy individual who just happened to live right up the hill from the building that we're going to build that block his view. So, because he has the money, not only that he delayed by any means, but he actually initiated a referendum to try to repeal the zoning from public use to residential use to build affordable housing for seniors. And so we have to go through the whole entire process of actually going to all of the political organizations throughout the city to explain to them what the project is and to get their support. And then, of course, after that, he also tried to go to court. And most of the time, any project that I have been involved with, especially projects for youth, get opposed automatically, such as a project on Sutter Street and Divisadero.
Thank you.
And they actually take it to court, all the way
Totally.
up to the California Supreme Court to try to stop it. And this is what happened in the city when you try to build affordable housing.
Vincent, yeah, it makes me think. There is one strong difference, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think in the Sunset Story you have a group of single-family homeowners and neighborhood associations and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
In ours, I I think
The
I know
villain is much clearer in a way.
Well, villains. I think Fiona and Leland got way too much play. There were a number, but we had very high-level political people, ex-mayor, ex-congressman, huge donators to Democratic campaigns.
I agree. I also
Yeah.
think because it's from an earlier era, like this is around 2001, right? Too I think when late 90s, 2001, when the fights over CCSF Chinatown were happening.
The community college?
Yeah.
Well, it actually went from the 70s all the way to getting
shit, really?
approved to 2006. So
God.
2008.
That was
so
30 years?
30 years. It took us 30 years.
Holy
The original bond measure was for $20 million.
Yeah.
The project ended up costing
Yeah,
$140
so I think
million.
the fault lines, if I can borrow the title of your movie, along which the opposition fell and where the supporters fell were different, I think, era-wise, for sure. I thought that was one of the clear contrasts between the two films.
Yeah, definitely. I think the block by block, it told it mostly from the perspective of the community that was trying to get it built. And what we attempted to do was tell the perspective of the group
Yeah.
that's trying to block.
In your movie, the villain gets way more airtime,
Right.
which is lovely. It just really. I really
There
wanted
was
more
more
Leland
laughter in
Yee.
this theater than I've had in previous screenings, but
'Cause they
for-
know,
for
they
good
know.
reason. I think it was hard for me. I set out to make this story without heroes and villains, and I obviously people can kind of decide who that is for them, but Flo is my own mother. I grew up in Oakland.
Wait,
and
what?
No, I mean Flo and my own mother have so much in common. Sorry,
Oh,
she's
they're
not actually my mother. Yeah,
Dude, you can't say it like that.
Yeah.
You can't. What are you doing?
I buried the lead. No. But what I'm saying is that my mom shares a lot in common with Flo.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. In terms of being a boomer from a generation that came to the Bay Area, and this was like their slice of the American dream, and so I really had, as much as I disagree with a lot of the tactics and kind of the underlying policy, I had a lot of empathy for that that perspective, and so I was kind of interested in kind of watching that play out and kind of understanding how the coalition that they were creating is formed, how all the the many issues that they brought to bear, how they kind of created a tight-knit community around
I found
that.
the scene where the mother talks about the guilt she experienced in having her children breathe this chemical actually very moving. That seemed completely sincere to me. I think other scenes where they speak, sometimes you suspect they're less than sincere, but that one seemed completely authentic to me. I sort of teared up.
Yeah.
It's a horrible way to feel, and I felt.
Yeah,
felt
I mean,
bad for her.
housing is interesting, and I started on this project in large part because, I love this city. I want to live for the rest of my life. We have a lot of problems, and a lot of the New York Times editorials and all that often point to the fact that we have progressive values, but we don't have progressive outcomes. And so that was kind of my attempt to sort of understand this woman. Black Lives Matter signs in her window and everything, kind of how she could, kind of get inside that.
Get
that
to where
perspective.
she got.
Yeah.
I want to ask the block by block delegates something. Have you seen this T-shirt before? This is the official T-shirt of the 2014 Leland Yee controversy. It features, there's some guns and marijuana, because that's what he sold to the FBI. And I'm wondering, he's such a clear villain. I'm surprised that the movie doesn't take this shot directly at him. I think by the time the movie had been made, he had already been convicted. For those that don't know, Leland Yee was we went over in the movie, but yeah, he was our state senator, got busted by the FBI for selling an RPG, and he took bribes to do all sorts of stuff like block, the Chinatown CCSF campus. What I don't know what I'm asking. What do you think about the guy? Do you still reminisce about Leland Yee? Have you visited him in
Well,
prison?
Let me. let me just say one little fact was when we had the community unveiling of the film. This was to the people that were actually in the coalition in the college. It was an invitation-only thing. It actually was the day that Leland got out of prison.
He's out?
Well, he served his sentence.
I thought he was still in.
No, well, I think he's...
Oh, you know what? I looked up Shrimp Boy Chow. I got confused.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
He's bringing in a lot of Chinatown people. Okay, let me just say one thing. Look, they're the pawns, okay? Leland's and the Fionas, the people that were elected or appointed officials in the city that conveniently either opposed this or pretended like they didn't oppose us and were neutral till the very last vote. This has included some nonprofits too. The man behind it was the landowner of the Hilton property. He was the person that won the redevelopment. It was a redevelopment site. That's the only redevelopment property in Chinatown, I believe. And he owned the land, and he rented it to a hotel developer. And the Hilton is just management. We always say Hilton. I think that kind of paints them unfairly as a villain, though they did oppose our project. But it's people that, we're in a political system that people are at the mercy of political campaign. You need a lot of money to win. So if you don't have campaign reform, this is what you get. These elected officials like Leona, Fiona, and other people that I can go on and name many, many names, they need those endorsements. They need those checks. And this is what creates. So, we can target them, but you're not looking at the wizard behind the curtain. And that's big money. And for us, it often is, when I was doing the shadow fights before Prop K, and this is why we got Prop K passed with Luis Rennie and Billy Maher co-writing that with me, we were against developers. One of the biggest shadows that was cast on Portsmouth Square was by a developer called the Empire Group. So this is big money that rules San Francisco politics. So if you're just going to focus on the elected officials acting as their pawns at press conferences or putting their names to the ads, you're really missing the real culprits.
You have something to add on the end there?
In addition to the politicians, every single lobbyist in this town, except for Marsha Smolin, were involved. They were hired to oppose this project and to get votes from the college board to vote against it.
I have a follow-up question for, I guess, all three of you that's sort of inspired by Nate's movie, and then I think we'll open up to a few audience questions and then see where it takes us. Nate's movie, and you can correct me if this isn't your intent, but I think part of what you outline in Fault Lines is that the process itself lends itself to the necessity of fighting about housing, that we have to go to the Board of Appeals, the Board of Supervisors, the courts, and that there's an opportunity for delay or rejection at every stage may itself be like a systemic problem that needs correcting. And the hero story of the movie, like Prop D, is on the ballot and aims to streamline some of these processes to make it less possible, in fact, to have appeals. And I'm curious, with CCSF Chinatown, this all happened so much before our sort of modern debate about housing streamlining. Looking back on it now, would you have wanted there to have been construction streamlining rules in place? Would you have preferred for there to have been less room for your opponents to even lodge complaints against projects like these in general?
Well, first of all, for the community college building, because it is a state project, the San Francisco Planning Code does not apply. But if you're talking about housing, then there are so many layers to begin with. Once something is applied for, you can file anyone It doesn't have to be a neighbor. It can be a project in Chinatown, and someone in Sunset can file what is called a discretionary review before the planning commission. So that's the first thing that happened. And if it's a conditional use, the appeal is to the board of supervisor. And if it is not a conditional use, then that project, and I'm talking about housing project.
Right. I
then
guess
goes
I'm
to
sort of
the Board
asking,
Appeal.
would you prefer if this were not the case? Would you prefer if like none of that was true?
Well, you have to change the,
Right. But like assume
Charter.
just God did it. Like if
no,
we could.
you
Like,
have to change the charter.
no, total. Let's say God changed the charter.
Well, the discretionary review is not a charter. Okay.
She's not going to
It
back
is-
down.
I tried,
on
I
this.
tried.
It is something that is put in because it was the Supreme Court of California said that people have a right to do that. And then,
This is what happens when you ask a lawyer.
It's tough out
well,
here.
but that's why the thing is
Well-
so complicated.
Totally.
But I think
And then for the Board of Permanent Appeal, it is in the charter.
the essence is power and money will weaponize anything. So, yes, they weaponized the ERR against us. And this happens all the time. Because they hired the 3 law firms, land use law firms, 2 public relation companies, Heller Manus Architects, and they threw everything in the kitchen sink at us. But that's, yes, you do need to streamline the process because you want to do something for the public good. But on the other hand, of course, well, I was on 22nd and Kirkham. If I really felt there was toxic waste and it was a threat, I would want a process to see that through. But there was that process and it went through the appeals and whatever.
Yeah. It's
I
tough to
think they
balance
were
all
lucky
these
they
things.
didn't have to go through 30 years of it like we did.
Totally.
The problem to change the process is that you have to have the Board of Supervisor and the politician to agree to change it.
You need the voters.
We need us. Okay. Thank you. Those lovely answers, all of them. Questions for anyone on the field, starting with you. I'll repeat the question, but you feel free to shout it at us.
I'm trying to recall the name of that new housing development or the new city in, I think it's the Fairfield area? California Forever. California Forever. I'm curious if we might hear any perspectives or opinions or anything on that.
The question is whether any of you have an opinion on the California Forever Solano project. Yeah,
Just any perspective.
yeah, any thoughts? If not, it's okay. We can move.
Yeah, I'm very interested in it. I kind of want to make it my next film, actually. But this one took me 4 years to make. I think that would take 20 because they're nowhere close to even breaking ground. And yeah, it's a lot of interesting issues with that project because we have to do hard things to get ourselves out of the myriad crises that we're in. But the only people that seem to have the wherewithal to do it are billionaires, and everyone hates fucking billionaires for good reason. So where does that leave us? Like, having a utopian city without cars sounds pretty great, but to pave over, farmland, displace farmers, less great. So yeah, I think it's kind of like this, but in this like weird utopian scale where everyone's trying to kind of say that this is my land and this is the future, and they're kind of fighting for it. So yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Zach?
Yeah, for the Fault Lines film, I'm wondering how you chose the family to profile.
The question for Nate is, for Fault Lines, how did you find the family in question?
Or you can answer generally if it is appropriate.
You met Andres. I mean, that's all I needed. Yeah, it took us about a year we went through a number of family services and social service organizations, and Compass was really instrumental in helping us, and met with many families. We were looking for people that were interested in being on film, but not too interested. Like, they wanted, some people gave us their business cards or for us to whatever. and people for whom the process was really playing out in real time, and that was the case with Andres, with Carlos, who actually didn't know that it would happen quite as quickly as it did. I just developed a bond with Carlos early on, and we had a couple meals and talked about his life, and I just knew that kind of, given the other stories we were telling, he and his son were just such a perfect, lifelong San Franciscan, loves this city more than anything, is not going anywhere, even if he gets kicked down 1,000 times, and he was just perfect.
Lovely. Sorry, I don't know your name.
Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Yeah, for both films, I'm wondering, have you noticed some similarities and fault lines between the two parents who basically wanted the same thing for their children, but they were on opposing sides of the issue? So my question is do you think it's possible, and do you think it's worthwhile to try to convince people that are in opposition to building more housing, like what the true cost of like inaction is?
So
Do you think it's a worthwhile endeavor, or do you think it's just like a lost cause?
I think the question is, sorry, just repeating, whether it's worthwhile to try to convince your opposition of your position, or whether it's just a lost cause that you write off.
I think the answer is absolutely yes. And if I have one quibble with YIMBY, I feel like sometimes the opposition is treated a little too villainous and a little too like they are one type. And to me, the NIMBY
Got my ass.
thing is more of a coalition of people that believe associated things, and I think there is room to bring people into the cause who, I think there are people who are dead set on it and are not going to change their views no matter what. But I think there's a lot of room on the edges, and YIMBY does this, and other organizations do this, but kind of creating a positive vision for the city and for our collective future that a lot of people can buy into for different reasons, rather than like the pugilistic game of like us versus them that every single issue across the in politics has been turned into. Housing is an interesting moment right now because it creates weird bedfellows. You kind of don't know what someone's position is on housing. It hasn't been like polarized in the same way that a lot of other issues have. So I think it's a critical task.
And I guess for the block by block members, you do hint in the movie that there were some sincere opponents for whom you did want to hear and understand their concerns and maybe hope to convince. Is that true?
No.
There were none. It's suggested by the film.
Well, what we call the other side is actually not in your neighborhood, which is people outside saying, we're going to save you from yourselves, and that was what was really irritating about the fight. We're not into convincing them, because by virtue that the last thing they were pushing was a building that was actually going to be fatter but shorter on the main corner site. And so they became totally transparent because they actually enlarged the shadow of the playground, on the playground. So we knew they didn't care about all the things they were talking about.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, did you ever see like a member of the Chinatown community sort of accidentally swept up into the opposition who maybe could have been convinced, or like did that happen? Were they all paid actors?
I agree. You have to say no. Preceding this was a preservationist struggle. It's not part of the movie, but that's why it took many, many more years. No, the preservationists didn't want to compromise one iota on anything. Mm-hmm. And it was very, very disturbing.
Especially the Colombo building fight.
Yeah, the Colombo building.
Yeah.
I mean, to the fact that you could not even enlarge the window space to let a little light into a classroom because the windows were, very historical.
Yeah, you got to watch out
I
for
agree.
the windows.
I didn't see compromise too often in this whole struggle from beginning to end.
That's not what I expected you guys to say.
Well, historic preservation is a little different than other projects because the city planning department is very, very concerned about preserving, and I'm talking about if you want to replace the window because they are, wood and they're already falling apart, you have to replace it exactly the way it was before. And so that gets very expensive for one thing. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is that earlier in this discussion, you talk about, is there any way to work with the neighbors to have them not oppose a project? Like the woman in your film, she kept asking about, they would never know. What I find is that if you actually take a project, as soon as you're going to develop it, before you even go to the planning department, you start to talk to the neighbors immediately around it, get their input. What you find is that you really work with them, and what I find is that they have good ideas. So I just incorporate their good ideas, tell my client, into the project. It actually makes it better. And then that way, when you work with the neighbor that way, you don't get the opposition. You always will have one or two that's going to be opposing it for whatever crazy reason, personal reasons. For people who, because their view is blocked or because they think a project is a supportive housing. So you're having young people living there, and then they think that it's going to be crime coming in. Low-income housing always, have low-income people. They always bring crime into
Totally.
But if you start to really work with them at the beginning so that they understand what the project is about, yes, you're going to still have one or two, but most of the opposition will go away.
Thank you for that. We have to get out of here soon. So I will do my tradition of asking for the question from the furthest back of the theater. Whoever has a question who happens to be in the furthest back row, you get it. It's you, I think. Hi.
Thank you so much for participating and sharing everything. I wanted to ask our block by block documentary stars, is it harder to organize now than it was 40 years ago?
So the question from Ruth is it harder to organize now than 40 years ago?
Okay, well, one of the big advantages of our group was pretty much each individual in our core group had 30 to 50 years of experience working on Chinatown issues. So we may not have all worked in the same areas. Some people were in labor, education. I was at open space and housing, and other people were, everybody had, they were involved with the churches, they were involved with the students and the faculty. So the beauty of it is right when this situation came, and some of us were in retirement, we were so riled up that we came together as a coalition, and we had tremendous personal trust in each other because we had worked on many, many other issues for many years. Not for self-interest, not because we were paid staff people, were working at a nonprofit or whatever. We knew each other, and so we could talk in shorthand. Everybody knew what their assignments were. Everybody had an area of expertise. So I have to say, our coalition was unique in that they hit us at a time when we had many decades of experience dealing with these kinds of issues.
Yeah, that's a very important question. I think that, those of us who grew up in the anti-Vietnam era, and we knew what protest was like. We've been protesting and we were organized. So in that sense, I don't know. I don't think this generation now is experienced enough with protest.
Also with elected officials.
How dare you?
Yeah.
No, but also we had dealt with some of these elected officials and that whole political spectrum for 50 years. Alice and I have both worked for private developers. We're not all nonprofit. I've worked for a Hong Kong developer. I've worked for a Canadian developer. I've done office buildings and hotel resorts. So you have to, if you have that experience, but on the other hand, I have to say, your generation has the internet. I mean, we
Don't lump me in with them.
we had emails and we were doing letter, postcard, mailings and things like that. So our technology was very different.
Yeah, I was really, one thing that really attracted me to your film was just seeing that you got thousands of, as you put it, bodies out for
Ironing board.
Yeah, I mean, that is an incredible turnout, actually. I think it is very hard for us to get 1,000 people out to a planning meeting about the approval of any.
1,500 postcards, but most of it were not in English.
I think if I said 1,500 postcards to get people to come to this movie, I get maybe like 10,
I think also for the community college building, Chinatown get together for the first time, including the establishment like the Chinese Six Company. We have never had the community that together. I mean, there are certain groups that are opposed to the project in Chinatown, but basically every community group is in support of it. And also, when we submitted petitions, there were 24,000 signatures.
So as I understand it, like your organizing was helped by your villains being so narrow, having so little share of the actual community, that it made it easier to unify, perhaps.
Well, also, I think you have to understand, there's a lot of publicity in the press about Asian Americans in education. Take the Harvard case in affirmative action. 3,000 of the 4,000 higher education institutions in America are actually community colleges and vocational. So there are more Asian Americans enrolled in the community college and the lower levels of education than there are at the Ivy Leagues and the state universities and the private institutions. So people underestimate when you have an issue. It is our crossover for our immigrant parents to become American. We have to have citizenship. My mother had to learn English from community college to get her citizenship, to go from being a factory wax worker and a Del Monte cannery worker to welding circuit boards,
Nice.
So you
Also,
need that.
Sorry, we do have to clear.
Education is very important to the Chinese community.
I understand. Yeah, very much so. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming. Nate, do you want to throw in something?
Well, I just want to thank you, Vincent. I met you in a coffee shop like 3 months ago, and then I got a call from you like, we're doing a screening next week. I was like, fuck yes.
That's not how that went.
But thank you. You're like the fairy godfather of independent cinema in San Francisco, so thank you.
That's so sweet.
For anyone who is interested in supporting or sponsoring a screening or hosting a screening, faultlinesmovie.com. We're just started getting rolling, so we're going to be doing them across the country, and would love your support.
And I also have one plug for BBB, because we have a half hour, and we're not putting it on YouTube or anything specifically because we want, if you want community showings and whatever, we want Q&A so that you can talk about your own issues in your own neighborhoods. So let us also know, Chinese for Affirmative Action.
You could
if you
do
want a
this
showing.
double feature again. All right, guys. I will be selling Leland Yee official T-shirts outside for $5. They're new old stock. They've been sat in Sonia Traus's garage for the last 10 years. The after party is at Dalva. So we'll be around the corner. Thanks for coming, everyone.